Greetings, Missouri Mid-South Conference. I bring greetings from my conference office. Last week, I was in Houston over the Labor Day weekend, and on that Saturday, I visited for the second time the detention center on, ironically enough, Emancipation Avenue in downtown Houston, where children are being detained, separated from their families, those who have fled other countries in order to come for safety in the United States. It is an experience that I can't aptly describe, of being at a place knowing that on the other side and inside that building there are children who are afraid and who are treated like animals, who are not being comforted by their parents or family, who are treated more like dogs than the children and the beautiful images of God that each one is. As I went on Saturday, I held with me Psalm 121, which is one of my favorite psalms, but this time I realized that this psalm can never be for you and me. This psalm, in the depths of who the psalmist is crying out to, this psalm is for those children in those detention centers being caged like animals. And so I invite you to hear Psalm 121, not for your sake, not for your church's sake, not for your children's sake. I invite you to hear Psalm 121 as our prayer for the children being separated from their parents and detained in cages throughout our country. I lift up my eyes to the hills. From where will my help come? My help comes from God, who made heaven and earth. God will not let your foot be moved. God who keeps you will not slumber. God who keeps Israel and the children who come to the United States will neither slumber nor sleep. God is your keeper. God is your shade at your right hand. The sun shall not strike you by day, nor the moon by night. God will keep you from all evil. God will keep your life. God will keep your going out and your coming in from this time on and forevermore. May it be so for the scared, hungry, dirty children in the detention centers throughout the United States. As we talk about what can we do in this moment to lift up our voices to say, this is immoral, this is inhumane, we have rules, and one of them is not to separate children from their parents and do lifelong trauma to these children. The Council of Conference Ministers of the United Church of Christ take seriously our prayerful response in this moment for such a time as this. And we take seriously that we cannot simply pray in church. We cannot simply talk about it. But we must go to Washington, D.C. as a collective body, and we must visit with elected officials to advocate on behalf of immigrant justice, especially those who are being separated and detained in inhumane ways. In the e-Courier this week, you will see right below my video information for you, because this is not just the conference ministers that are going, but we are acting on behalf of our church's ministers and members, and we invite you to participate with us with 3 ways. Number 1, I invite you to share stories of what your church is doing right now in response to immigrant justice and love. How are you sharing and showing God's love to our immigrant neighbors in your community or in a more global sense? I invite you to share those stories in an email to me. They just need to be about 2 sentences. And what we will do is we will collect those stories as we draft a letter written by the conference ministers, and so that we can show this is what our churches are doing. So some examples are to provide assistance and food or shelter. I know that some of our church members have met at the bus station those immigrants who don't speak English to make sure that they get on the right bus going to their next destination. I know that some of our churches have voted to become a sanctuary church, and that some of our churches are indeed a sanctuary church, as Christ Church in Maplewood has been a sanctuary church for Alex Garcia for 18 months or more. I invite you to write 2 sentences. You can email them to me. If you can mail them, email them to me by Monday, September 12th. Number 2, I invite you to join our UCC-wide letter writing campaign, where you write to your elected officials advocating on behalf of humane immigration justice and making sure that we close the children's detention centers. We've got sample letters in both the e-Courier, but also in links from the Justice and Peace Action Network, as well as if you need to look up who your member of Congress is, we've got a link to that as well. You can send that, your letter, directly to either the elected official, or you can send it to the UCC DC office, Justice and Witness DC office, and they will then have those letters ready when we arrive, the conference ministers, so that I will share those letters when I make appointments with our elected officials from those serving in the Missouri Mid-South Conference, Arkansas, Memphis, and in Missouri. I invite you to write letters, because letters matter. When we are trying to advocate change in policy, it is important that your voice is heard and shared. The 3rd action that I invite you to take is to pray. Pray with your body, your mind, and your spirit. Pray on Sunday mornings. Pray in your morning prayer. Pray in your action of what you do to make sure that all of God's children and adults and beloved know that they are created in God's image and that they are not left alone. Pray for elected officials that they may hear and know that there are other ways to advocate and change policy for our immigrants. Pray for our detention workers whose responsibility and job it is to care for the children and the adults. Pray that they would treat those immigrants with the same compassion that they treat their own children and family members. Pray for those fleeing danger in ways that they are willing to walk and leave from their own homes not knowing what their future will be for another country. Our prayers, when they are offered in the very substance of who and whose we are, not just as individuals, not just as American citizens, but as God's beloved community as creation. That prayer is the energy that changes and moves. In closing, I want to say that our unifying call draft boldly declares that what we are about, what God has called us to do and be, is that we are the United Church of Christ in Arkansas, Memphis, and Missouri, and that we are to support and empower one another to share God's love and mercy and justice for all. I believe that what I do as your conference minister as I join my colleagues in Washington, D.C., September 24th through 26th, is indeed supporting and empowering one another for you, for our immigrant neighbors, and for all of creation. And that indeed, I and you and we together are sharing God's love and mercy for all in the ways that we advocate with our immigrant neighbors this day and forevermore. Amen.